I have a tradition of calling Phyllis Ackerman right before Rosh Hashanah. Phyllis was the temple president of Temple Beth Am in Monessen, Pennsylvania, where I served as a student rabbi. You've heard me speak about this special community on past High Holy Days. 2 years ago, Temple Beth Am closed its building as fewer and fewer Jews lived in the steel towns of the Monongahela Valley, about an hour south of Pittsburgh. Phyllis was temple president for over 30 years. As no one would step up, and she felt responsible for keeping the small Jewish community running. After the synagogue closed, she shared with me that she continued to keep the books of the cemetery. Last week, I spoke with Phyllis to check in and wish her a Shana Tova. She recently moved to Indianapolis to be close to one of her sons. As we caught up, she shared with me, "Ethan, I'm so sad now that I've moved away from Monessen. I've had to give up keeping the cemetery books. I couldn't be responsible anymore." I'm not sure if I know anyone who better embodies the Talmudic expression, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Lezeh, all Israel is responsible for one another, than Phyllis Ackerman. She felt responsible for organizing the onegs, welcoming the student rabbis, polishing the Torah crowns, and for making sure that the final resting place of the Jews of Monessen was taken care of. She believed so deeply in community. Tonight, Jews around the world come together in synagogues, outside, and online to mark the holiest night of our Jewish calendar. Yom Kippur is an opportunity for us to look inward, to see how we may have sinned and missed the mark. We are to look at our relationships and seek ways to mend them or improve them for next year. We are to let go of grudges that are weighing us down, say sorry to those we may have hurt, and forgive those who seek forgiveness. However, there's a strange dichotomy of these next 24 hours. While this day is very personal and forces us to look inward, we traditionally do this work in a synagogue filled to max capacity. And our liturgy reminds us that Yom Kippur is not only reflecting on our missteps, but also acknowledging our communal responsibility. This evening, we recited 2 core confessional prayers, Ashamnu and Al Chet. Both of these prayers are in the plural. Ashamnu, Baganu, Gazalnu. We abuse, we betray, we are cruel. And Al Chet Shechatanu Lefanecha. We have sinned against you. But I didn't abuse anyone, betray anyone, or behave cruelly. I know I wasn't perfect this year, but I did not commit any of these sins. If this day is about our personal misdeeds, then why do we recite all of these sins in the plural? One answer is that it's not about me or you. It is about us. Rabbi Danny Zemo wrote, "We may open our machzor as individuals, but we read it as a part of an eternal people. we should remind ourselves that the very notion of individual self is a modern one and not entirely accurate. The ancient, our forebears, thought as part of a collective. I may have been deceitful and dishonest. Someone else was arrogant and devious. A third was aggressive and self-serving. Collectively, we own them all. Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Lezeh. All Israel is responsible for one another. We take communal ownership of sin. You likely know the story from Midrash Rabbi. A man is in a boat and he begins to drill a hole under his seat. His fellow passengers are alarmed and protest, "What are you doing?" The man replies, "Stay out of my business. What concerns are my actions to you? I, after all, am drilling a hole under my seat, not yours." The other passengers reply, "That is so. But when the water enters this boat and the boat sinks, we too shall drown." We've felt this as a community more than ever in the last 18 months as we grapple with individual liberties versus communal responsibility. On Rosh Hashanah, I shared my disappointment that we were not able to gather as we hoped with our sanctuary at full capacity. The emergence of the Delta variant changed our plans. Yet, this did not need to happen. Unlike last year, we have the ability, the science, the vaccines to lessen the spikes that we see around our country. If more people were vaccinated, stopped spreading lies and mistruths about the vaccines, didn't call masking tyrannical, and thought about the common good instead of individual needs or desires, we could have gathered safely with more people in our sacred space. Dr. Anthony Fauci testified that the nation's traditional emphasis on the rights of individuals distinguishes the United States from many countries. Because of the individual spirit of our country, we don't listen to authority. At a recent Westfield Board of Education meeting, there was significant discussion about masking in the public schools. Many speakers who are opposed to required masking in schools use the language of "my children." And listening to the meeting, I heard things like this: as a parent, I should be able to tell my children what they can or cannot wear. I am concerned that I'm raising my children in fear because they have to wear masks. I don't want my child's speech to be delayed. My children might not be able to hear the teacher or read social cues of their teachers and their friends when wearing masks. I, too, am deeply concerned about my children. I would love my first grader to have started elementary school without wearing a mask, or my preschooler here at the temple not to have to wear one. Though honestly, I rarely hear any complaints from them. To be in community, we must not only think about our own children, but also about the immunocompromised teachers and students and the children 12 years and younger that don't have the ability to receive a vaccine. We are in this position due in part to those who insist on drilling a hole in their side of the boat, unconcerned about the fate of others. And it's not just about this pandemic, where our society values personal autonomy over the collective good. Our individual choices, as well as companies' decisions, affect the world we live in. based on an analysis of the Gallup poll and the Global Footprint Network data sets. Countries with high levels of individualism, yes, the United States is one, in most cases have higher ecological footprints, while they are less eager to take responsibility for the impacts on nature. The researchers suggest that people in individualistic societies are less likely to organize around collective pro-environmental action and more likely to care only about personal benefits rather than the social good. With the hottest July on record, with extreme storms and flooding becoming the norm, with the United Nations issuing a code red for the environment, we must think about each of our own individual actions on the planet. We must act individually and communally for environmental justice. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the former chief rabbi of England who died this past year, shared, "Do you know something? My favorite phrase in all of politics, a very American phrase, is 'we the people,' because it says that we all share collective responsibilities for our collective future. And that's how things really are and should be. When we move from the politics of me to the politics of all of us together, we discover those beautiful counterintuitive truths. The nation is strong when it cares for the weak. It becomes rich when it cares for the poor. It becomes invulnerable when it cares about the vulnerable. That is what makes great nations." Tomorrow morning, we will read the words from our Torah portion. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem. You stand this day, all of you, before the Eternal One, your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, each and every Israelite, including your children, your wives, even the sojourners within your camp, from woodchopper to water drawer. I make this covenant with its sanctions not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here this day and with those who are not with us here this day. Our Torah portion reminds us that while we are all individuals, water drawers and wood choppers, men and women, young and old, we stand receiving God's covenant together. Our stories, our lives are bound together. We are in covenant. My actions affect you. Your actions affect me. We are responsible for the health of our community. We are responsible for the health of our world. We are responsible for carrying on our Jewish traditions. Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Lezeh. All Israel is responsible for one another. May this Yom Kippur remind us of our own missteps as well as our communities and inspire us to do better, not just for me individually, but for the greater good.